The morning sun filtered through the large windows of Elite Fitness Center, casting long rectangles of light across the polished floor. It was 6:15 a.m., and Desiree Williams had already been there for 45 minutes. The gym was beginning to fill with the usual early birds, people squeezing in workouts before heading to offices, classrooms, or other responsibilities that filled their days. Desiree moved with purpose between stations, her routine memorized after years of disciplined training. At 32, her athletic build reflected a lifetime of physical dedication, though few would guess just how extensive her training had been. The gym was her sanctuary, a place where she could maintain her rigorous fitness regimen without the intensity and scrutiny of her professional life. As one of the few women who had completed Navy SEAL training, she preferred these civilian hours. Here, she wasn't Lieutenant Williams. She was just Desiree, another person trying to stay fit. She wore simple black leggings and a navy blue moisture-wicking shirt, her curly hair pulled back in a practical bun. Nothing about her appearance screamed military, and that was exactly how she wanted it. The weight section was her destination this morning. She needed to focus on strength training, particularly her shoulders and back. As she approached the free weights area, she noticed it was primarily occupied by men, a common situation that had never bothered her. Desiree had spent her career working in male-dominated spaces and had learned long ago not to be intimidated by being the only woman in a room. She selected her weights carefully and found an open spot near the mirror wall. Her form was impeccable as she began her first set of shoulder presses, breathing rhythmically with each controlled movement. The familiar burn in her muscles was welcome, a reminder of the strength she had built over years of dedication. 20 minutes into her routine, Desiree became aware of someone watching her. A quick glance in the mirror confirmed it. A man around her age had been staring for the past few minutes. She ignored him and continued with her exercises, switching to lateral raises with slightly lighter weights. "You're going to hurt yourself lifting like that," a voice said from behind her. Desiree didn't break her concentration or rhythm. She'd heard comments like this before. Unsolicited advice from men who assumed women needed their guidance in the weight room. The man moved closer, positioning himself where she couldn't avoid seeing him. He was tall, with a gym-built physique that suggested regular workouts but not professional training. His expression held the smug confidence of someone who believed they knew better. "I said you're doing it wrong," he repeated, louder this time. "Your elbows are too high. Let me show you." Desiree completed her set before responding. "Thank you, but I'm good with my form," she said politely but firmly, her voice carrying the natural authority she'd developed as an officer, without revealing her background. The man, who would later be identified as Trevor, seemed taken aback by her response. His eyebrows raised slightly as if surprised by her confidence. "Suit yourself," he said with a shrug. "Just trying to help. Most women don't know how to lift properly." Desiree returned to her workout, moving on to tricep extensions. She had encountered this type of behavior throughout her career, and had learned that minimal engagement was usually the best approach. Still, she remained aware of Trevor's presence as he lingered nearby, occasionally glancing in her direction. The gym continued to fill as the morning progressed. The 7 a.m. rush brought in more people, creating a steady background noise of clanking weights, whirring treadmills, and the occasional grunt of exertion. Desiree welcomed the increased activity. More people meant less focus on her. She moved to the cable machine for her next set of exercises. As she adjusted the weight settings, she noticed Trevor had followed, taking the station next to hers despite several other open machines. "Back day, huh?" he said, setting his water bottle down. "You know, women should focus more on legs and cardio. Upper body strength isn't really a female thing." Desiree took a deep breath. Her years of training had taught her to remain calm under pressure, to assess situations before reacting. This wasn't a threat, just an annoyance. She decided to try redirecting. "Everyone's fitness goals are different," she replied neutrally, beginning her set of cable rows. Trevor watched her with growing irritation. Something about Desiree's confidence seemed to bother him, like an itch he couldn't scratch. He began his own workout but continued to offer commentary. "Your form is actually not bad," he said, his tone suggesting surprise. "But you're using too much weight. Women should use lighter weights and do more reps for toning." Desiree had heard these outdated fitness myths countless times. In her SEAL training, she had pushed her body to limits that would challenge anyone, regardless of gender. She had carried the same packs, completed the same obstacle courses, and endured the same sleep deprivation as her male counterparts. But Trevor didn't know any of this, and she had no interest in enlightening him. "I appreciate your concern," she said, completing another perfect set, "but I'm following my own program." Something in her calm dismissal seemed to trigger Trevor's insecurity. His expression hardened, and his next comments took on a more pointed tone. "Let me guess," he said, loud enough for nearby people to hear. "You read some fitness blog that told you to train like a man? That's why there are so many women in here now getting in the way and using equipment they don't understand." A few heads turned at his raised voice. Desiree noticed a gym employee glance in their direction, but then continue wiping down machines. She calculated her options: confront, report, or ignore. Based on her assessment of Trevor, ignoring him seemed most likely to de-escalate the situation. She moved to the pull-up bar, leaving Trevor at the cable machine. Physical distance might help end the interaction. As she began her pull-ups with controlled fluid movements, she could feel multiple eyes on her, not just Trevor's. Her technique reflected years of training, and she easily completed 12 reps before dropping lightly back to the floor. Trevor had followed her again. His workout seemed forgotten as his focus remained entirely on Desiree. "Show off much?" he muttered, just loud enough for her to hear. "Trying to get attention from the guys in here?" Desiree took a sip from her water bottle and checked the time. She had about 15 minutes left in her scheduled workout. She could modify her remaining exercises if needed to avoid further interaction. "Hey, I'm talking to you," Trevor said, stepping closer. "It's rude to ignore people who are trying to help you." The space between them had narrowed, and Desiree's training kicked in automatically, assessing distance, positioning, potential threats. She wasn't concerned for her safety, but she recognized the signs of escalation. "I'm here to work out," she said clearly, making eye contact for the first time. "I'm not looking for conversation or advice. Please respect that." Her direct approach seemed to surprise Trevor momentarily, but then his expression darkened further. "Typical," he scoffed. "Women want equality until someone offers them help. Then they get all high and mighty." A couple nearby had stopped their workout to watch the interaction. The woman whispered something to her partner, who nodded with a concerned expression. Desiree decided to complete her workout in another area. She gathered her towel and water bottle and began walking toward the free space near the stability balls. Trevor's voice followed her. "That's right, just walk away. You know I'm right," he called after her. The gym manager, a middle-aged woman named Patty, had noticed the commotion and approached Desiree. "Everything okay over here?" she asked quietly. "Just a disagreement about workout styles," Desiree responded, her voice calm despite her growing frustration. "I'm finishing up my routine over there." Patty nodded but cast a wary glance toward Trevor, who had returned to his workout with aggressive movements, slamming weights with unnecessary force. For the next 10 minutes, Desiree focused on her core exercises, deliberately facing away from the weight area. The confrontation had been minor compared to challenges she'd faced in her career, but it highlighted why she valued her anonymity. In her professional life, her accomplishments had earned her respect. Here, in civilian clothes without her rank or record visible, she encountered the same prejudices many women faced. As she completed her final set of planks, Desiree noticed Trevor heading toward the water fountain near the entrance to the locker rooms. She would need to pass that way to reach the women's shower facilities. With a quick assessment, she decided to wait a few minutes before heading in that direction, allowing him time to move on. She stretched methodically, cooling down her muscles while keeping track of Trevor's location through peripheral vision, a habit from her tactical training. When he appeared to be engaged in conversation with another gym member, she gathered her belongings and walked toward the water fountain, planning to fill her bottle before showering. As she leaned down to fill her bottle, she sensed movement behind her. Trevor had broken off his conversation and followed her. Before she could straighten up, he positioned himself uncomfortably close. "You know," he said, his voice lower but intense. "Attitude like yours is why men don't want to work out with women around. You think you're too good to take advice?" Desiree capped her water bottle and turned to face him, maintaining a neutral expression despite the clear violation of her personal space. The morning had been going so well before this encounter, and now she found herself calculating the best way to exit the situation without escalation. Little did Trevor know that the woman he had chosen to harass had spent years in training specifically designed to handle threatening situations. As she stood there outwardly calm but internally alert, Desiree was already mapping multiple scenarios for what might happen. Next, a skill that had served her, well, in much more dangerous circumstances than a gym: confrontation. The first part of this encounter was drawing to a close, but the real confrontation was just beginning. Trevor stood too close, his frame blocking the path between Desiree and the locker room. The morning crowd had thinned slightly as the clock approached 7:30 a.m., with many early risers having already left for work. Still, there were enough people around that Desiree felt no immediate concern for her safety, just growing irritation at this unwanted confrontation. "I asked you nicely to leave me alone," Desiree said, her voice steady and controlled. Years of military training had taught her that calm communication was often the best first approach to any conflict. "I'm here to work out, not to socialize." Trevor's face flushed slightly, his eyes narrowing. "You think you're special or something?" He glanced around, seeming to check if others were watching their interaction. "I've been coming to this gym for 3 years. I know what I'm talking about when it comes to proper form." Desiree took a deliberate step to the side, attempting to move around him without escalating the situation. "I appreciate that you have experience, but I'm comfortable with my routine." As she moved, Trevor shifted his weight, once again blocking her path. This movement was deliberate, a clear signal that he wasn't finished with the conversation. The water fountain area created a natural bottleneck in the gym's layout, and Trevor was using this to his advantage. "3 different guys were watching you mess up those shoulder presses," he said, his voice taking on a mocking tone. "We were all thinking the same thing, another woman who doesn't belong in the weight section." Desiree felt a familiar sensation, the calm focus that came over her during challenging situations. Her breathing remained steady, her mind clear. This wasn't the most difficult confrontation she had faced, not by a long shot, but she recognized the potential for escalation. "You don't speak for everyone in this gym," she replied, meeting his gaze directly. "And I have every right to be here using the equipment I choose. Now please step aside." A few feet away, a man in his 40s had slowed his walk toward the locker room, clearly noticing the tense exchange. He hesitated, seemingly unsure whether to intervene. Patty, the gym manager, was now at the front desk, her back turned as she helped a new member. Trevor's posture changed, shoulders squaring, chin lifting. Classic dominance posturing that Desiree had observed countless times in training scenarios. "Or what?" he challenged, his voice dropping lower. "What are you going to do about it?" Desiree assessed her options. She could call out to Patty, create a scene that would likely result in staff intervention. She could attempt another route to the locker room, effectively retreating from the situation, or she could stand her ground, which might either diffuse or escalate the confrontation. "This isn't productive for either of us," she said, choosing her words carefully. "We're both here to work out. Let's respect each other's space and move on with our day." Something about her composure seemed to further agitate Trevor. People who relied on intimidation often became frustrated when their targets remained unruffled. "You know what your problem is?" he said, leaning in slightly. "You women come in here thinking you're equal to men in everything. Nature doesn't work that way. There's a reason men are stronger. We're built for it. You're just trying to be something you're not." The older man who had been hovering nearby finally approached. "Hey buddy, leave the lady alone. She's not bothering anyone." Trevor turned his attention to the newcomer, momentarily distracted. "Mind your own business, old man. This doesn't concern you." The man, who appeared to be in his early 60s with salt and pepper hair and the lean build of a longtime runner, didn't back down. "Actually, it does concern me. I'm a member here too, and harassment concerns all of us." Desiree appreciated the support but recognized the potential for the situation to escalate with another person involved. "Thank you," she said to the older man, "but I can handle this." Trevor scoffed. "Yeah, listen to her. She thinks she can handle things." He turned back to Desiree. "Go ahead and tell me how you're going to handle this." The challenge in his voice was unmistakable now. Desiree had encountered this type of personality throughout her military career. Individuals who built their self-worth on perceived physical superiority, and became threatened when that superiority was questioned. "I'm going to walk away," she said simply, "and I suggest you do the same." She moved to step around him again, and this time Trevor did something that crossed the line from verbal harassment to physical confrontation. He planted his hand firmly on her shoulder and pushed her back. "We're not done talking," he said. The contact wasn't particularly hard, but it was deliberate, a clear physical boundary violation. In that instant, Desiree's training kicked in at a deeper level. Her situational awareness heightened, time seemed to slow, and her focus narrowed. The older man stepped forward. "Hey, don't touch her." Several heads turned toward the commotion. Patty looked up from the front desk, immediately sensing trouble and starting to move in their direction. Desiree remained calm, her voice measured but firm. "Take your hand off me, now." Trevor's hand remained on her shoulder, his fingers pressing into her workout shirt. "Or what, you'll run to the manager? Call for help?" His mouth twisted into a smirk. Typical. Desiree looked directly into his eyes. "I won't ask again. Remove your hand." Something in her tone, the quiet authority, the absolute certainty, caused a flicker of doubt to cross Trevor's face. For a brief moment his confidence wavered. But rather than backing down, he doubled down, bringing his other hand up toward her other shoulder. "Or what? What are you going to—" His words cut off as Desiree moved. Her movement was precise, controlled, and far faster than Trevor had anticipated. She stepped slightly to the side, simultaneously bringing her right arm up in a circular motion that broke his grip on her shoulder. In the same fluid movement, her left hand caught his wrist, applying just enough pressure to a specific point that caused immediate discomfort without injury. Trevor's eyes widened in surprise. He attempted to pull away, but found himself slightly off balance, his wrist still firmly controlled by Desiree's grip. "What the—" he started, his free hand moving toward her in what might have been another attempt to grab her, or possibly to strike. Desiree's response was immediate but measured. She shifted her weight, using Trevor's own momentum and poor balance against him. With minimal apparent effort, she guided him sideways until his back was against the wall next to the water fountain. His wrist was now secured in a control hold that looked almost casual to onlookers but was causing enough discomfort to keep him immobilized. The entire sequence had taken less than 3 seconds. "I asked you nicely to stop," Desiree said, her voice still remarkably calm. "I asked you to respect my space. I gave you multiple opportunities to walk away." Trevor's face registered shock, followed quickly by anger and embarrassment. He attempted to break free, but Desiree adjusted her hold slightly, causing him to wince and go still. "Let go of me." "You crazy." "I will," she interrupted. "As soon as you agree to walk away and leave me alone." By now, a small crowd had gathered. Patty had reached them, her expression a mixture of concern and confusion as she tried to assess what was happening. "What's going on here?" she demanded. The older man who had attempted to intervene spoke up. This guy was harassing her, wouldn't let her pass. Then he put his hands on her and pushed her. Another gym member, a woman in her 20s, nodded. "I saw it too. He's been following her around the gym, making comments for like half an hour." Trevor's face had turned red, partly from embarrassment, partly from the awkward position he found himself in. "She attacked me," he protested. "Look what she's doing." From the perspective of those watching, it didn't look particularly dramatic, just Desiree standing calmly while somehow keeping Trevor against the wall with what appeared to be minimal effort. "He put his hands on me after I repeatedly asked him to leave me alone," Desiree explained to Patty. "I defended myself using the minimum force necessary to prevent further contact." Patty looked between them, then at the gathered witnesses. "Trevor, is this true? Did you put your hands on her?" Trevor's expression darkened. "I barely touched her. She's completely overreacting." He pushed her shoulder, the older man confirmed. "I saw it clearly. It was deliberate." Patty's face hardened. "Trevor, we've had complaints about you before. Unwanted advice is one thing, but physical contact crosses a line." "This is ridiculous," Trevor sputtered. "Look at her, she's the one assaulting me." Desiree slowly released her hold, stepping back to give him space while remaining ready to defend herself if necessary. "I'm not interested in escalating the situation. I just want to finish my workout in peace." Trevor rubbed his wrist, glaring at her with a mixture of anger and bewilderment. The ease with which she had controlled him seemed to confuse him deeply. "How did you—" he began, then stopped himself. His embarrassment was clearly mounting as he realized how many people had witnessed what had happened. Patty turned to Desiree. "Are you okay? Do you want to press charges?" Desiree shook her head. "That won't be necessary. As long as there's no further incident, I consider this matter closed." Trevor seemed unable to process what had just occurred. His worldview, one where he was physically dominant and intimidating, had been challenged in a way he clearly hadn't experienced before. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice now tinged with uncertainty rather than aggression. Desiree simply looked at him, not offering any explanation. Her composure throughout the entire confrontation had never wavered, a stark contrast to Trevor's increasingly agitated state. Patty turned to Trevor, her expression stern. "You need to leave now and don't come back today. We'll be reviewing your membership status after I file an incident report." Trevor looked around at the gathered crowd, seeming to realize that he had no supporters among them. His face flushed deeper with humiliation. "Whatever," he muttered, grabbing his gym bag from where he'd left it near the water fountain. "This place isn't worth it anyway." As he stalked toward the exit, Desiree watched him go, her posture finally relaxing slightly. The confrontation had been resolved, but the morning's events were far from over. Little did Trevor know that his actions had just put him in conflict with someone whose entire career had been built on handling situations far more dangerous than a gym disagreement, and this was only the beginning of what would become a much larger story. The gym fell into an awkward quiet after Trevor stormed out. The small crowd that had gathered began to disperse, returning to their workouts with occasional glances toward Desiree. She remained composed, though inwardly she was frustrated that her morning routine had been so thoroughly disrupted. Patty, the gym manager, touched Desiree's arm gently. "Let's talk in my office for a minute," she suggested, her voice low and concerned. Desiree nodded, following Patty through the gym toward a small office tucked behind the front desk. The glass-walled space offered privacy, while still allowing Patty to keep an eye on the gym floor. "Please have a seat," Patty said, gesturing to a chair across from her desk. She closed the door and sat down, pulling out an incident report form. "I'm so sorry about what happened." "Are you sure you're okay?" "I'm fine," Desiree assured her. "This isn't the first time I've dealt with unwanted attention." Patty looked up from the form, her pen poised above the paper. "That was impressive, what you did out there. Most people wouldn't know how to handle themselves like that." Desiree offered a small smile but didn't elaborate. Her military background wasn't something she typically shared with strangers, and her SEAL training was information she kept even more private. "I've had some self-defense training," she said simply. Patty nodded, seemingly satisfied with this explanation. "Well, it certainly came in handy. Trevor has been problematic before. He's received warnings about giving unwanted advice, especially to female members. But this is the first time he's crossed the line into physical contact." As Patty began filling out the incident report, the older man who had tried to intervene knocked on the office door. Patty waved him in. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, "but I wanted to make sure everything was okay. And I thought you might need a witness statement. That would be helpful." "Thank you," Patty replied. The man introduced himself as Richard, a retired high school teacher who had been coming to the gym for nearly a decade. He recounted what he had seen, confirming that Trevor had been the aggressor and that Desiree had responded only after physical contact was made. "I've seen that young man bothering other women before," Richard added, "always hovering, always offering unwanted advice. But this was different. He was deliberately intimidating." As Richard spoke, Desiree noticed another gym employee peering through the office window with wide eyes, whispering something to a colleague. Word was spreading quickly about the incident. After Richard finished his statement and left, Patty looked at Desiree with curiosity. "I have to ask, where did you learn to do that? What you did looked like professional training." Desiree had prepared for this question. "I've taken some advanced self-defense courses," she said, which wasn't untrue, though it significantly understated her background. Patty seemed to sense there was more to the story but didn't press. "Well, I'm glad you knew how to protect yourself. Not everyone would." As Patty finished the incident report, Desiree glanced at her watch. Her planned workout had been cut short, and now this unexpected detour had eaten into her morning further. She still needed to shower and get to her temporary office at the naval base by 9 a.m. "Is there anything else you need from me?" Desiree asked. "I'm running a bit behind schedule now." "Just your signature on this form," Patty said, sliding the paper across the desk. "And I want to assure you that we're taking this very seriously. Trevor's membership will likely be revoked after I speak with the owner." Desiree signed the form and stood to leave. "Thank you for handling this professionally." As she exited the office, she noticed several people watching her with newfound interest. The gym's usual morning rhythm had resumed, but there was a different energy now. Whispers, glances, nods in her direction. Desiree sighed inwardly. She had hoped to maintain a low profile during her 6-month posting in San Diego, but that seemed less likely now. In the locker room, 2 women fell silent as she entered. Then one of them approached her. "That was amazing what you did out there," she said, her voice filled with admiration. "I've wanted to tell that guy off for months." "Thanks," Desiree replied simply, opening her locker and gathering her shower supplies. "No, seriously," the woman continued. "The way you handled him without even breaking a sweat. Are you like a police officer or something?" Desiree smiled politely but deflected. "Just someone who believes in being prepared." She showered quickly, changed into her civilian clothes, tailored navy slacks and a crisp white button-down that gave no hint of her military rank, and headed toward the exit. As she passed the front desk, Patty called out to her, "Desiree, wait a second." The manager hurried over, holding out a business card. "The owner asked me to give you this. He'd like to speak with you when you have time." Desiree took the card, noting the name, Michael Chen, owner, Elite Fitness Center. "He was very impressed when I told him what happened," Patty explained. "He's actually been looking for someone to lead some women's self-defense workshops here. Thought you might be interested." "I appreciate the offer, but my schedule is pretty tight right now," Desiree replied. Teaching civilian self-defense wasn't part of her current mission, and maintaining a low profile remained important. "Just think about it," Patty suggested. "It could help a lot of women." Desiree nodded non-committally and headed out to the parking lot. The morning sunshine had grown stronger, promising another beautiful Southern California day. She slid into her sensible black sedan, an unremarkable government-issued vehicle, and checked her phone. 3 missed calls from the base and a text message from Lieutenant Commander Hal Peterson. "Check in ASAP, situation developing," Desiree frowned. Her team wasn't scheduled for deployment for another 3 weeks. A situation developing could mean many things, none of them likely to be simple. She started the car and pulled out of the parking lot, her mind already shifting from the gym incident to her professional responsibilities. As she waited at a red light, she noticed a familiar figure on the sidewalk, Trevor, pacing back and forth while talking animatedly on his phone, his gym bag still slung over his shoulder. He hadn't gone far after being kicked out. Desiree turned her head slightly, hoping he wouldn't notice her. The last thing she needed was for him to see her vehicle or follow her. The light changed and she accelerated smoothly, leaving Trevor behind. In her rearview mirror, she saw him look up as she passed, but the sedan's tinted windows prevented him from seeing inside. Still, something about his posture, the tension, the agitation, suggested this wasn't the end of their interaction. Desiree merged onto the highway toward the naval base, her thoughts divided between the developing situation at work and the unexpected confrontation at the gym. Years of training had taught her to compartmentalize, to focus on the mission at hand while remaining aware of potential threats, however unlikely they might seem. 20 minutes later, she pulled into the secure parking area at the base, showing her ID to the guard at the checkpoint. As she walked toward the administrative building, she noticed increased activity, personnel moving with purpose. Several officers gathered near the entrance, engaged in serious conversation. Lieutenant Commander Peterson spotted her immediately and broke away from the group. "Williams, glad you're here," he said, his usual formality indicating the seriousness of whatever was happening. "We've been trying to reach you." "Sorry, sir. There was an incident at the gym," she replied, falling into step beside him as they entered the building. "An incident?" Peterson raised an eyebrow. "You okay?" "Yes, sir. Just a civilian who didn't understand boundaries. It's handled." Peterson knew better than to worry about Desiree's ability to handle herself, but curiosity flickered across his face. Anyone need medical attention? No, sir. Minimum force applied, situation de-escalated. He nodded, satisfied with her brief explanation. Good, because we've got bigger concerns right now. The team's being activated early. Briefing in 10 minutes. They reached a secure door requiring both keycard access and a fingerprint scan. As Desiree placed her thumb on the scanner, she pushed thoughts of Trevor and the gym incident to the back of her mind. Whatever mission awaited would require her full attention. The door opened with a soft hiss, revealing a high-tech operations center where several team members were already assembled around a large digital display. The screen showed satellite imagery of what appeared to be a vessel in distress. Hostage situation on a research vessel, Peterson explained quietly as they entered. 3 American scientists, 2 security personnel. Pirates boarded early this morning off the coast of Somalia. Desiree's training kicked in fully now, her mind clear and focused. This was what she was trained for. Complex extraction missions where lives hung in the balance. The gym confrontation suddenly seemed trivial in comparison. As she took her place at the briefing table, however, her phone buzzed with a notification. A new email from an unknown sender. Normally she would ignore it until after the briefing, but something made her glance down. The subject line read, "I know who you are." A chill ran through her that had nothing to do with the room's air conditioning. She opened the email quickly. Saw your car at the military checkpoint. Navy, huh? Not done with you. We'll find out more. No signature, but she didn't need one. Trevor had followed her, at least partially. He hadn't seen her enter the base. The checkpoint was visible from a public road, but he'd seen enough to connect her to the military. Desiree closed the email and silenced her phone, turning her attention to the mission briefing. The situation with Trevor would have to wait. Right now, lives were at stake, and her team needed her focused and ready. But as Lieutenant Commander Peterson began outlining the extraction plan, she made a mental note to address the potential security concern. Trevor's wounded pride and apparent obsession could become a problem, not just for her personally, but potentially for operational security as well. The morning's gym confrontation had unexpectedly spilled over into her professional life, creating a complication she hadn't anticipated, and based on that threatening email, Trevor was far from finished with his vendetta against the woman who had humiliated him. 4 days had passed since the incident at Elite Fitness Center. For Desiree, those days had been consumed by intensive mission preparation, leaving little time to worry about Trevor or his threatening email. The hostage extraction had been successful. All 5 Americans rescued with minimal casualties among the pirate crew. It was the kind of operation that reminded Desiree why she had pushed through the grueling SEAL training program, when so many others, men and women alike, had dropped out. Now, sitting in Lieutenant Commander Peterson's office for the mission debrief, she felt the familiar mix of exhaustion and satisfaction that followed a successful operation. Your team performed exceptionally well under pressure, Peterson said, reviewing the after-action report on his tablet, especially considering the accelerated timeline. Thank you, sir. They're the best at what they do. Peterson set down the tablet and leaned forward slightly. There is another matter we need to discuss, Lieutenant. Something in his tone caught her attention. Sir, security flagged an incident. Someone's been making inquiries about you, trying to access your service record through unofficial channels. Desiree's thoughts immediately went to Trevor. When did this happen? First attempt was 3 days ago. Another yesterday. Peterson's expression was serious. They used your name and what appears to be your social security number, though they didn't have the complete number. A chill ran through her. Her social security number wasn't something Trevor could have easily obtained from simply seeing her car at a checkpoint. Do we know who's behind it? Peterson shook his head. Not definitively. The attempts came through civilian channels, Veterans Affairs and then the Navy Personnel Office. They were flagged because they didn't follow proper protocols and the person couldn't provide adequate identification. Desiree took a deep breath. I may know who it is, sir. There was an incident at my gym the morning before we deployed. A civilian who became aggressive when I refused his unwanted advice. He made physical contact, I defended myself, and he was removed from the premises. The incident you mentioned briefly before the briefing, Peterson recalled. Yes, sir. Afterward, I received an email suggesting he'd followed me at least to the base checkpoint. He seemed to have figured out I'm in the Navy. Peterson's expression darkened. Why didn't you report this immediately? The mission took priority, sir. And honestly, I assessed it as a low-level threat, just someone with a bruised ego making empty threats. She paused. I may have underestimated his determination. Peterson sighed. This could become a security issue, Williams, especially given your team's classification level and the nature of your operations. I understand, sir. I'll handle it. How do you propose to do that? There was a note of skepticism in Peterson's voice. First, I need to confirm it's him. Then, depending on the severity of his actions, either a formal restraining order or a direct conversation, to make him understand the consequences of his behavior. Peterson considered this for a moment. Naval intelligence is already looking into who accessed your information. If it's your gym acquaintance, they'll find him quickly. He paused. Until this is resolved, you're on restricted duty. No field operations. Desiree wanted to protest but knew it would be futile. Security protocols existed for good reasons. Understood, sir. Take a few days. Rest after the mission, and deal with this civilian situation before it escalates further. Peterson's tone softened slightly. You're too valuable an asset to have sidelined by something like this. Desiree left the meeting feeling frustrated. Being pulled from field operations even temporarily was a significant setback. Her team would continue training without her until the security concern was addressed. As she walked to her temporary quarters on base, her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Enjoying your time at the base, Lieutenant Williams? We should talk. Desiree stopped walking, staring at the message. Trevor had not only discovered her name and rank, but now had her personal phone number. This had escalated beyond a simple case of wounded pride. She forwarded the message to the security contact Peterson had given her, then continued to her quarters. Inside, she changed from her uniform into civilian clothes, jeans and a simple blue t-shirt, and sat at her laptop. A quick search for Trevor, and the gym's name yielded results almost immediately. Trevor Harding, 34, personal trainer and self-described fitness influencer with a modest following on several social media platforms. His profile showed a man obsessed with his physical appearance, posting daily workout videos and offering paid online training programs. Scrolling through his recent posts, Desiree noticed a change in tone over the past few days. His usual enthusiastic fitness advice had been replaced by vague references to frauds and people pretending to be something they're not. One post from the previous day was particularly concerning, uncovering the truth about someone who thinks they're untouchable. Stay tuned. Desiree closed her laptop, her decision made. This needed to be addressed directly and immediately. Naval intelligence would handle the official investigation into how he'd accessed her information, but she needed to end his fixation before it compromised her career or, worse, her team's security. She grabbed her keys and headed to her car. The address listed on Trevor's business website was a small fitness studio about 30 minutes from the base. According to the schedule posted online, he should be finishing his last training session of the day around now. As she drove, Desiree considered her approach. This wasn't a military operation with clear protocols. It was a delicate civilian situation, requiring restraint and diplomacy, skills that were part of her training but not ones she used as frequently as her physical capabilities. The fitness studio was located in a strip mall, nestled between a sandwich shop and a dry cleaner. It was small but modern, with large windows displaying a handful of clients working with personal trainers. Desiree parked where she could observe the entrance and waited. 20 minutes later, Trevor emerged, gym bag slung over his shoulder, phone in hand. He looked different from the gym confrontation, more polished in athletic wear bearing his personal logo, hair carefully styled. The image of a successful fitness professional, not the aggressive man who had invaded her space days earlier. Desiree stepped out of her car and approached him directly. Trevor Harding, we need to talk. His head snapped up, eyes widening in recognition before narrowing with hostility. Lieutenant Williams. What a surprise. His voice dripped with sarcasm. Come to apologize? No, I've come to tell you to stop. The messages, the attempts to access my personal information, it ends now. Trevor's expression shifted to one of mock innocence. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just a concerned citizen doing some research on someone who assaulted me. You weren't assaulted. You made unwanted physical contact and I defended myself. There are multiple witnesses and security footage that confirm this. Desiree kept her voice level, aware that they were standing in a public place. What you're doing now crosses several legal boundaries. Trevor stepped closer, lowering his voice. You humiliated me. Do you know what that video did to my reputation? Someone recorded it on their phone. It's being shared among gym circles. This was news to Desiree. I had nothing to do with any recording. Doesn't matter. My clients are asking questions. My credibility is shot. His face flushed with anger. A woman half my size took me down like it was nothing, and now everyone's seen it. That's not my problem, Trevor. My concern is that you're accessing government systems trying to get information about me. That's a federal offense. Something flickered in his eyes, a moment of uncertainty. I have a right to know who assaulted me. No, you don't. And what you're doing could land you in serious legal trouble. Desiree took a measured breath. I'm here as a courtesy, to give you one chance to stop before this goes further. The authorities are already investigating the attempts to access my records. Trevor's confidence seemed to waver. I have a friend in Veterans Affairs. He was just helping me out. Then your friend is risking his job and possibly facing criminal charges. Accessing personal records without authorization is illegal. This appeared to register with Trevor for the first time. He said it was just a database lookup. Nothing serious, it's very serious. And the text messages could be considered harassment. Desiree maintained steady eye contact. This stops now, or the consequences will be significant. Trevor's posture changed, some of the bravado draining away. What do you want from me? Delete any information you have about me. Tell your friend to stop accessing government systems. And we both move on with our lives, she paused. I have no interest in damaging your reputation or career. This isn't personal for me. Not personal? Trevor scoffed. You made it personal when you embarrassed me in front of everyone. You made it physical. I responded appropriately. It should have ended there. They stood in silence for a moment, the evening traffic passing by, unaware of the tension between them. Finally, Trevor spoke. And if I agree to stop? What about the video? It's already out there. I can't control what other people recorded or shared, but I won't take any action against you if this ends now. Desiree was careful with her words. However, if there's any further contact or attempts to access my information, I won't be coming alone next time. It will be official. Trevor seemed to be weighing his options, his expression shifting between anger and calculation. Fine, he said eventually. Considerate dropped. But you should know. I found out enough. I know what you do, who you work with. Special operations isn't as secret as you people think. The statement was deliberately provocative, designed to unsettle her. Desiree kept her expression neutral, refusing to confirm or deny anything. Goodbye, Trevor. I trust we won't need to have this conversation again. As she turned to walk away, Trevor called after her. The video's still out there, Lieutenant. People will keep asking questions. Desiree didn't respond, continuing to her car without looking back. The confrontation had gone about as well as could be expected, but Trevor's parting words troubled her. If a video of the gym incident was circulating, and if Trevor had indeed discovered information about her role, the security implications could be serious. Back in her car, she called Lieutenant Commander Peterson to update him on the situation. This was far from over, but she had taken the first step toward containing a threat that had unexpectedly emerged from what should have been a routine morning workout. As she drove back to the base, Desiree couldn't help but wonder how such a simple interaction had spiraled into something that now jeopardized the career she had worked so hard to build. 2 weeks had passed since Desiree's confrontation with Trevor outside his fitness studio. The situation had settled into an uneasy quiet. No more text messages, no more attempts to access her service records. Naval Intelligence had traced the database inquiries to a Veterans Affairs clerk named Paul Dennison, a longtime friend of Trevor's according to their social media connections. Dennison was now facing disciplinary action and possible criminal charges. Desiree had been cleared to return to active duty, but the incident had left a mark on her otherwise spotless record. A security review notation wasn't career-ending, but it was a blemish she hadn't anticipated or deserved. On this particular morning, Desiree found herself back at Elite Fitness Center for the first time since the confrontation. She had been tempted to find a new gym, to avoid any reminders of the incident, but that felt too much like retreating. SEAL training had taught her many things, and giving ground unnecessarily wasn't one of them. Patty greeted her warmly at the front desk. Desiree, good to see you back. We were starting to think you'd found another gym. Just been busy with work, Desiree replied with a small smile. Thought I'd get back to my regular routine. Well, you'll be happy to know Trevor's membership has been permanently revoked, Patty said, lowering her voice slightly. After reviewing the security footage and witness statements, the owner made the decision immediately. Desiree nodded. Good to hear. She glanced around the gym, noting several familiar faces among the morning regulars. A few people looked her way, recognition flickering in their eyes. The incident hadn't been forgotten. Oh, and Michael, the owner, is still interested in talking to you about those self-defense classes. If you're interested, Patty added. Desiree had almost forgotten about that offer. I'll think about it, she said, though her schedule made such a commitment unlikely. She headed to the locker room to store her bag, then began her warm-up on a treadmill. The familiar rhythm of her feet and the steady pace helped clear her mind. These past 2 weeks had been stressful, with security reviews and explanations to superior officers about how a civilian had managed to discover details about her military role. Halfway through her warm-up, Richard, the older man who had tried to intervene during the confrontation with Trevor, stepped onto the treadmill beside hers. Good to see you back, he said, setting his machine to a moderate walking pace. Some of us were worried you might not return after what happened. It takes more than that to keep me away from my routine, Desiree replied. Richard nodded approvingly. I'm glad. Too often, people like Trevor drive good people away from spaces they have every right to occupy. He paused his treadmill settings to look at her directly. I hope you don't mind me saying, but the way you handled yourself that day was remarkable. My daughter's in college, and I wish she had those kinds of skills. Desiree maintained her steady pace. Self-defense is something everyone should learn. Absolutely, Richard agreed, resuming his walk. Actually, several of us asked management if they would consider offering classes. They mentioned they'd already approached you about teaching. This was the second time in 10 minutes that the self-defense classes had been mentioned. Desiree hadn't seriously considered the offer, given her primary responsibilities and the importance of maintaining a low profile. But something about Richard's genuine concern for his daughter made her reconsider. I'm not sure my schedule would allow for regular classes, she said carefully. Even a one-time workshop would be valuable, Richard suggested. Just the basics, especially for the younger women who come here. Desiree completed her warm-up in thoughtful silence. As she moved to the weight section, the same area where the confrontation with Trevor had begun, she noticed several women working out, most of them sticking to the cardio machines or lighter weights. Only one other woman was in the free weights area, and she kept glancing nervously at the men around her. The scene reminded Desiree of her early days in the military, before she'd earned her reputation and the respect of her male colleagues. That constant awareness, the feeling of being watched and judged, the need to prove yourself repeatedly, it was exhausting and unnecessary. After finishing her workout, Desiree showered and changed, then stopped by the front desk on her way out. Is Michael in today? She asked Patty. He just arrived, actually. Want me to let him know you'd like to speak with him? 10 minutes later, Desiree was sitting across from Michael Chen in the same office where she'd given her statement about the incident. Chen was younger than she'd expected, perhaps in his early 40s, with an energetic presence and a straightforward manner. I've been hoping to meet you, he said after they'd introduced themselves. What happened with Trevor was unfortunate, but how you handled it was impressive. We've actually changed some of our staff training based on the incident. How so? Desiree asked. More emphasis on identifying problematic behavior early, clearer guidelines on when to intervene. Chen leaned forward slightly. We don't want anyone to feel unsafe here, but the reality is that incidents like yours happen in gyms everywhere. Usually less dramatically, but the same basic dynamic. Desiree nodded. She'd seen it many times herself. The unsolicited advice, the hovering, the territorial behavior in the weight areas. Patty mentioned you were interested in having me teach some self-defense classes, she said. Chen's face brightened. Absolutely. Nothing extensive, maybe a weekend workshop to start. Basic techniques, situation awareness, that sort of thing. We'd compensate you, of course. I'm not interested in payment, Desiree replied, but I could do a one-day workshop. 4 hours, basics only. Focus on prevention and de-escalation. with some physical techniques as a last resort. That would be fantastic, Chen said, clearly pleased. When could you do it? They settled on a date 3 weeks out, giving the gym time to advertise the workshop. Desiree was careful not to commit beyond the single session, but as she left the gym, she felt a sense of purpose she hadn't expected. Perhaps some good could come from the unpleasant encounter with Trevor after all. The following Saturday, Desiree was reviewing her plans for the workshop when her phone rang. The caller ID showed Lieutenant Commander Peterson. "Sir," she answered. "Williams thought you should know. That video of your gym incident has gained some traction online." Desiree's stomach tightened. "How bad?" "Mixed, actually. It was posted with a derogatory comment about you, but the responses have been overwhelmingly supportive. Most viewers are impressed by your restraint and technique. Has it compromised security?" That was her primary concern. No names or identifying details attached to the video, just shows the physical interaction. Naval intelligence is monitoring, but at this point it's being treated as a minor issue. Peterson paused. "There is one interesting development, though. The man who confronted you, Trevor Harding, he's facing some professional backlash. Apparently his fitness business has taken a hit." Desiree wasn't surprised. A personal trainer who couldn't handle himself in a physical confrontation would naturally lose credibility. "There's something else," Peterson continued. "He's making noise about pressing charges against you for assault." "He doesn't have a case," Desiree said confidently. "There were multiple witnesses plus security footage." "Agreed. It's likely just talk, a way to save face, but I wanted you to be aware." After the call ended, Desiree found the video online. It was short, just 30 seconds, capturing the moment Trevor put his hand on her shoulder through her controlled response. The comments below were overwhelmingly supportive of her actions, with many women expressing admiration for her technique and composure. One comment in particular caught her attention. "This is why everyone should learn basic self-defense. Not to hurt others, but to protect yourself when necessary." The sentiment aligned perfectly with what Desiree planned to teach in her upcoming workshop. This wasn't about fighting or aggression. It was about boundaries, respect, and the right to exist in shared spaces without harassment. 3 weeks later, Desiree arrived at Elite Fitness Center for the self-defense workshop to find the studio area packed. Over 30 people had signed up, the majority women, but with a decent number of men as well. Richard was there with a young woman who must have been his daughter. Patty and Michael greeted her enthusiastically, showing her the setup they'd prepared based on her specifications. As she began the workshop, introducing herself simply as Desiree, a fitness enthusiast with extensive self-defense training, she scanned the eager faces before her. None of them knew about her military background or SEAL training. They didn't need to. What they needed was to feel empowered in their daily lives, to know they had options if they ever faced a situation like the one she had encountered with Trevor. "Self-defense begins long before physical contact," she began. "It starts with awareness, confidence, and clear boundaries. Today, we'll cover techniques that anyone can use, regardless of size or strength." For the next 4 hours, Desiree guided the group through exercises and scenarios, drawing on her training but adapting it for civilian use. The participants were engaged and enthusiastic, practicing the moves with growing confidence. By the end of the workshop, something had shifted. Desiree saw it in the way the women stood taller, made more direct eye contact. Even the men seemed to have gained new perspective, several of them commenting on how they'd never considered certain situations from a woman's point of view before. As everyone gathered their belongings to leave, Richard approached with his daughter. "I can't thank you enough," he said warmly. "Kate's heading back to college tomorrow, and I feel better knowing she has these skills." Kate, who appeared to be in her early 20s, nodded enthusiastically. "This was amazing. So much more practical than other classes I've tried." After everyone had left, Michael approached Desiree with an expanded proposal, a regular monthly workshop, with the possibility of more advanced sessions for returning participants. To his surprise, she agreed to consider it. Walking to her car afterward, Desiree reflected on how differently things had turned out from what she'd expected. What began as an unpleasant confrontation had evolved into an opportunity to share her knowledge and help others. While her primary mission as a SEAL would always come first, perhaps this civilian role had value too. Her phone buzzed with a text from Peterson. "Charges officially declined by prosecutor. Case closed. Desiree smiled slightly. One chapter ended, another beginning. Not at all what she had planned, but then again, the best missions often evolved in unexpected ways. Adaptability was, after all, a core part of her training, both as a SEAL and as a human navigating the complex waters of daily life.